Shop in-store or at mybobs.com.
Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. President Trump now saying about the deadly school shooting he would have run in even if he didn't have a weapon. And one governor standing up and asking the president today to take arming teachers off the table. The storm system, at least 8 dead, a dozen twisters in 4 states. Communities underwater tonight. And now the new storm brewing in the east. The midair scare, flames shooting from the engine today. A passenger jet on its way to L.A. forced to turn around. We have new reporting tonight of the deaths of 4 American soldiers in that deadly ambush in Niger. And the new video from just days before. Martha Raddatz standing by. The young med student viciously attacked and killed at the library. And the mysterious disappearance of a CDC employee not seen since he left work 2 weeks ago. What police are now saying.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us to start another week here. And we do begin tonight with President Trump's own words today about the deadly school shooting. The president hosting many of the nation's governors at the White House, criticizing the response and then telling the governors he would have run into the school even without a weapon. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl leading us off.
President Trump said today he likely would have showed courage under fire and run into Stoneman Douglas High School himself to confront the killer.
You know, I really believe, you don't know until you test it, but I think I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. Most of the people in this room would have done that too.
Speaking to a large bipartisan group of governors, the president revealed he had lunch Sunday with Wayne LaPierre, leader of the NRA, which is now under intense pressure. At least 16 corporations, including Delta Airlines, MetLife, and several major rental car companies, have severed their ties with the NRA since the Parkland shooting. The president called the NRA leaders patriots, but he insisted he's not afraid to oppose them.
And I want to tell you, they want to do something. And I said, fellas, we got to do something. It's too long now. We got to do something. Don't worry about the NRA. They're on our side. You guys, half of you are so afraid of the NRA. There's nothing to be afraid of. And you know what? If they're not with you, we have to fight them every once in a while. That's okay.
And one idea the president has embraced would require a fight, a plan to raise the minimum age for buying a rifle from 18 to 21. The NRA opposes the idea, and since their lunch with the president, he hasn't mentioned it either.
In concept, the president still supports it, but in terms of legislation, we'd need to see what that looks like before we weigh in further.
The idea the president seems most enthusiastic about remains allowing qualified teachers and school officials to carry concealed weapons to school.
I want highly trained people that have a natural talent, like hitting a baseball or hitting a golf ball or putting.
But the governor of Washington State, Democrat Jay Inslee, rose to confront the president.
I've listened to the first grade teachers that don't want to be pistol packing first grade teachers. We need to listen that educators should educate, and they should not be foisted upon this responsibility of packing heat in first grade classes. So I just suggest we need a little less tweeting here, a little more listening.
The president immediately turned to Republican Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, one of a handful of states that allows qualified teachers to carry concealed weapons. Abbott said some schools actually have warning signs like this one out front.
Warning anybody coming on there that if they attempt to cause any harm, they're going to be in trouble.
Well, I think that's great.
John Karl with us live tonight at the White House. And John, as the president was addressing the governors, we know First Lady Melania Trump was speaking to their spouses, and she praised those high school students who have spoken out about gun control. Take a listen.
I have been heartened to see children across this country using their voices to speak out and try to create change. They're our future, and they deserve a voice.
John, as you know, the students the First Lady now praising have been taking on the NRA. President Trump today revealing, as you reported there, that he had lunch with the head of the NRA over the weekend.
And you heard him say that he's willing to take on the NRA, to fight the NRA. But, David, he has not supported a single piece of legislation, a single bill that the NRA opposes. And this much is clear. Unless the president leads, Congress is not going to act on any gun measures. He is going to have to push the Republican leadership to do it, or they will not act.
All right, John Karl leading us off on a Monday night. John, thank you. Meantime, for the first time, the deputy branded a coward by some is now responding tonight. He's accused of being outside the school building, but failing to go inside to confront the shooter as it was all underway. ABC's Victor Oquendo with the new statement tonight.
Tonight, as teachers and students begin returning to the scene of that horrific school shooting, that school resource officer accused of waiting outside of the building while the rampage unfolded, defending himself, saying in a letter through his lawyer the allegations that Mr. Peterson was a coward and failed to meet the standards of police officers are patently untrue. Former Deputy Scott Peterson claims he initially received a call of firecrackers and that once he arrived at the building, he heard gunshots, but believed that those gunshots were originating from outside of any of the buildings. Peterson calling the sheriff's strong statements about him
devastated, sick to my stomach.
Quote, uncalled for attacks upon his character. This as Sheriff Scott Israel is on the defensive himself.
I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
Israel now investigating reports from nearby Coral Springs police officers who also responded to the school that several other Broward County deputies waited instead of rushing into the school during the shooting. But Israel says the tapes he's reviewed don't back up this claim. And now calls from 74 Florida Republicans for the sheriff, a Democrat who has spoken out against arming teachers, to be suspended for his department's ignoring repeated warning signs about suspected shooter Nicholas Cruz. The sheriff's office responded to 18 calls related to Cruz, 2 of those calls now under review, including one call in November saying Cruz could be a school shooter in the making.
The caller, as you know, came from Massachusetts. She told the deputy that the subject, the killer, the eventual killer, was in somewhere in Palm Beach County.
The sheriff then asked, did the person who received that call follow up?
Indications at this point is that he did not.
Victor Oquendo with us live tonight from outside the school. And Victor, Florida Governor Rick Scott, a Republican who has already backed raising the minimum age to buy firearms to 21 now, also now says he disagrees with the president's plan to arm some teachers.
David, the governor rarely disagrees with the president, but here he is on the record saying that he'd rather see teachers teach and focus on making sure that law enforcement with the proper training is in place to protect the students. David?
Victor Oquendo tonight. Victor, thanks. Next this evening, the deadly storm system, at least 8 people killed, a dozen confirmed tornadoes hitting 4 states, including Alvaton, Kentucky. Many communities underwater tonight as we now track a new system moving into the east, and ABC's Marcus Moore in the storm zone.
Tonight, millions reeling from a weekend tornado outbreak and severe flooding. Residents frantically digging through debris of this Clarksville, Tennessee home.
They just rescued that dog from the rubble.
A family pet surviving an EF2 twister, winds up to 125 miles per hour. Clazier Way and his wife huddling in their bathtub.
My wife was terrified. She crying. I'm terrified because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether it was coming back again.
This as at least 70 rivers across the heartland are at or above flood stage, with more rain on the way. Here in Paducah, Kentucky, they are fighting, installing these floodgates for the first time in 7 years as the Ohio River continues to rise. Saturated ground in the northeast causing this massive rock slide outside Charleston, West Virginia. And in Pittsburgh, a landslide ripping this home apart after the wettest February on record there. And here in Kentucky tonight, they are keeping a very close eye on the Ohio River, which is about a mile from where I'm standing right now. One of the many roads left impassable because of high water. David.
Wow, Marcus, a mile away from the Ohio River, and we're all watching that. Rob's tracking it all for us.
Well, you saw it's sunny there now, but there's more rain coming, David, and so much water to drain through the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. And by this time tomorrow night, another batch of rain emerges over Dallas and moves northeast across the storm zone, and we'll have a pulse of severe weather on Wednesday night into Thursday. The heavy rain right over the Ohio Valley in the flood zone, and then this could potentially become a nor'easter during the day on Friday. But our main concern is certainly for the rain that's coming over the flood zone the next 2 days.
All right, tracking it through the end of the week, Rob. Thank you. To the Supreme Court tonight, today rejecting the Trump administration's request to take immediate action on DACA. The court declining the government's petition to review a federal judge's ruling, keeping the program in place for now. The decision means the government must continue renewing permits for now, allowing 700,000 Dreamers to stay in the country. The deadline for the program had been March 5th. There is also news tonight on the Russia investigation, and after the memo written by Republicans in the House, now the Democratic response released. The president responding by calling into a cable show Saturday night. And tonight here, the new fallout. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas tonight.
Tonight, House Democrats say they've soundly refuted a Republican memo claiming anti-Trump bias at the heart of the Russia investigation.
This is not some effort, as the Republicans wanted to portray it, of the deep state opposing Donald Trump. That's nonsense.
But President Trump says the Democrats' memo only reinforces what Republicans had already found.
Certainly the memo was a nothing. A lot of bad things happened on the other side. Not on this side, but on the other side.
The Republican memo drafted by the staff of House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, a close Trump ally, concluded the Justice Department acted improperly in obtaining a secret surveillance warrant against former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Nunes claimed the FBI relied largely on information in a dossier written by former British spy Christopher Steele. He insisted the surveillance court was never told Steele's work was politically motivated and paid for in part by the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign.
To have a secret court that gets abused like this is totally unacceptable.
But in their rebuttal memo, Democrats say the FBI made only narrow use of Steele's information, obtaining the warrant against Page after information obtained through multiple independent sources corroborated Steele's reporting about him. Those sources seemingly redacted here for security reasons. Democrats also find that Justice Department officials repeatedly informed the court about Steele's background, credibility, and potential bias against Trump.
All right, so Pierre Thomas with us live tonight from Capitol Hill. And Pierre, Republicans argue the Steele dossier is at the heart of the Russia investigation. But in this memo, Democrats try to make it clear that the FBI started investigating well before the FBI even saw the dossier.
That's right, David. The Democrats say the FBI launched their investigation a full 7 weeks before they were even made aware of the Steele dossier. David?
Pierre Thomas tonight, thank you. Overseas tonight, reports of a deadly chemical attack in Syria. Victims in eastern Ghouta, a Damascus suburb, treated for alleged exposure to chlorine gas. The area under intense attack by the Assad regime for more than a week now. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is backing the Syrian government, has ordered a daily 5-hour, quote, humanitarian pause in that fighting. And we have new reporting tonight, new images here in the investigation into a deadly ambush in Niger and the deaths of 4 American soldiers. National Geographic tonight with never-before-seen images prior to that fatal mission. Here's ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz tonight.
This is 25-year-old LaDavid Johnson, just weeks before he and 3 other Americans would be ambushed and killed. The tattoo across his chest, Maisha, his wife. And here he is with Nigerian soldiers his unit was tasked to train. Johnson was the mechanic and the self-appointed unit barber.
Is there something you haven't been able to fix or do that you've been asked to do on this trip?
Negative, sir.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Well, when you figure out what that is, let us know and we'll make sure you get trained on it. Or you can just watch YouTube like you did with haircut.
Yes, sir.
And this is Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright, 29, an explosives expert.
Anybody can shoot a gun, you know. Demo is something else. It's a lot more fun.
The Special Forces unit had never come under fire, but it is clear from this Nat Geo video this was hostile territory.
In this area, ISIS, and then in this area, we have Boko Haram.
On October 3rd, Wright, Johnson, and 9 others from the unit, as well as Nigerian soldiers, headed out to meet local leaders. But on their way back, without air cover, heavy weapons, or heavy armor, were sent to a far more dangerous mission to try to capture or kill a local terrorist. 24 hours later, they were ambushed.
There's never a doubt in my mind how he fought and what he would do for any member of that team. And I am proud.
Those soldiers just days before that mission. Martha Raddatz with us tonight. And Martha, we do know that the Pentagon is expected to release its findings in the coming days.
That's exactly right, David. It's been an exhaustive investigation as to why that mission dramatically changed. But the families of the fallen will be briefed before it's made public, David.
All right, Martha Raddatz, who's been following this from the start. Thank you, Martha. And the series Chain of Command airs on the National Geographic Channel tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on Nat Geo. Next tonight, Ivanka Trump defending her father from allegations of sexual misconduct. The president's daughter and White House advisor was asked about the 16 accusers who have come forward. Ivanka Trump telling NBC she believes her father over the women.
I think it's a pretty inappropriate question to ask a daughter if she believes the accusers of her father when he's affirmatively stated that there's no truth to it. I don't think that's a question you would ask many other daughters. I believe my father. I know my father.
The president has denied all the allegations. There is still much more ahead on